Today we're going to be talking with Dr. Mark McIntyre. He's an emergency medicine resident in Houston, Texas, and just looking to hear your experience in medicine, how you got there, what you love about it, the challenges, and also some of like the financial decisions and ramifications that you might be dealing with now or that you see yourself facing in the future. Thanks for taking some time to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So you're in Houston, right? Which program are you with?
I go to Baylor College of Medicine down here in Houston, Texas.
Okay, all right, cool. And are you're PGY two? Is that right?
PGY2, yep.
Okay, all right. And so you've got like a year and a half left before you're done.
Yes, yes. In general, EM programs typically come in two flavors, a 3 and a 4 years. Mine particularly is a 3 year.
Okay, all right. Oh, nice. All right. Well, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about like who you are and like what brought you to medicine.
Sure. So I have a pretty convoluted story. I'd be considered a non-traditional student because I didn't come straight through from undergrad into medical school. But initially, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Went into undergrad like everyone else, bio pre-med. Somewhere along the way, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Switched over to psychology. Was doing Spanish for a little while. Ended up graduating with psychology and then a certificate in Spanish. Then went into the workforce. So,
My son just popped up.
eh,
Hey, can you say hello?
Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you for bringing this to me.
yeah. So went into the workforce, and I was actually into the workforce for about 4 to 5 years
Hmm.
before I went to med school, and so I had a plethora of jobs.
Oh,
From I was a teacher briefly. I was doing like labor. I always talk about this a lot on my Twitter. Like I used to do construction. I was a medical assistant. Somewhere along the lines of that gap, I stumbled across a post-bac program at a school called Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. Got accepted into that program. Didn't know until I showed up that the program was paired with an MBA program as well. The thought was, you have the program was a master's in medical physiology. So the thought was you'd have like this science background and then you get your MBA as well. And then you can go down the street to Cleveland Clinic and become a healthcare administrator.
okay.
These are for the people who, got to the post back and decided, hey, I don't want to do medicine for whatever reason. So I was doing that and I actually got hired. I actually got a job out of that, working for a place called Medical Mutual Health Insurance, for a health insurance company in Ohio. So it's actually the largest one. But at the same time, I had applied to medical school. So naturally, once I started working and getting into the swing of my job, I got into medical school. So I quit my job and then I went to medical school. And I ended up going to the Ohio State University College of Medicine in Columbus, Ohio. Did my 4 years there, and then that's basically how I got into medicine. But the truth be told, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor to some degree. I just, had the opportunity to try other things and saw like, hey, I still like medicine. I still want to do this. I had, 5 years in between, so had a lot of time to think and decide. And it was a very, informed decision for me to come back to medical school and start something like this.
Hmm. Hmm. Very cool. What type of manual labor did you do?
So I did construction, and so I can tell you my specific job. So if you ever are driving on the highway and you see those lines on the highway, that's basically what I was part of a team that did that. So
Really?
it was basically a convoy. So you have a pickup truck in the front with like a broom on the front.
Uh-huh.
So this would go down the street and more or less sweep stuff off the street. Then behind in the middle, you had this huge truck, and I forget what it's called. I just would call it a paint truck, but it's basically like a truck that paints the road.
Yeah.
Um, Oh wait,
Very.
I'm forgetting. There's another truck in between it. There's one that sweeps, and then there's one that Wait, sorry, nope. It comes after the truck. Okay, yeah. So there's a sweeper, then you have the paint truck, and then the paint truck has a bunch of components. So it takes multiple people to operate this truck. There's someone who has to actually do the painting. There's someone who's driving, and then
Uh-huh.
there's like a mixing component where you mix the paint with these little we call them beads, but they're like little glass pieces of glass that add the reflection onto the paint. So it's like reflection mixed like with the paint, so the paint is reflective. And so that comes through, that sprays the line, and then there's a truck that comes behind it that puts cones down
Uh-huh.
so that no one drives in it. And then a mile behind that truck is another truck that comes and picks the cones up because it takes exactly 1 mile for the paint to dry. So it's like this whole convoy.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. So it drives
Yeah.
real fast. That's
And
cool.
so my role is I could be at any point of that convoy. Typically, I prefer to be what I call like the cone boy. Basically, I'd be in the very, very last truck, hanging off the back of it, picking up the cones. And so the truck is driving. So as it's driving, I'm picking up, and so it's almost a rhythm. I would hang on with my left and go like this, and I'm picking stack, 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 stack,
Yeah.
stack. And once they got big enough, I would take the stack, move it somewhere else in the truck, and then pick stack, stack, stack. And then every X miles, we'd have to stop and refill the paint truck up. And
Yeah.
so they would pull a supply truck up that was just full of these 50-pound bags full of beads.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, and we'd form like a kind of like an assembly line, and we'd just pass the beads, load it up, and then and so that was just in a day. And so we would do miles and miles and miles of road every day. I was in Southern Ohio on the border of Ohio and West Virginia. So we'd go in and out between West Virginia
Hmm.
and we're doing like country roads. These aren't main highways. We're doing like back country roads that haven't been painted in 50 years, like those kind of things.
Wow.
Um, but basically the schedule was 6 to 6. Just like medicine.
Huh.
The guys that I worked with, they would always say, "Hey, anything after 12 hours, which was our day, was time and a half. You get paid whatever your rate is plus a half of that."
Hmm.
So they always love to work over. So regularly, I'm putting in 14, 15-hour days, even 16 hours days if we had enough sunlight during the summer because it's hard to do it at night. So we try to time it with the sunlight. Um, and you're out on the road, so you're living out of a Motel 6 from Monday to Friday, every single week for the summer. And then,
Huh.
on the weekend, you get to go back to wherever your home city. At the time I was based in Cleveland.
Okay.
So I'd go back to Cleveland on the weekend. And then Monday morning at like 4 a.m., I would show up at the base. We drive down to Southern Ohio and then repeat, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and so
Was
yeah, it was an interesting life because, some people, that's what they do. You know what I mean? They'll do that for the next 40 years. And then this is good money. You got paid weekly. In rural Ohio, you could definitely raise a family off of it. So it wasn't a bad job. It just was hard because you're out. Like I'm hanging off the back of a truck in the middle of summer, like under the direct sun,
yeah.
or moving these beads, so it's physical labor.
Do you feel like that prepared you for the work you're doing now?
Oh,
Like it,
definitely.
like from like a stamina standpoint?
Definitely, 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 definitely. It did in multiple ways, and I talked about this in my application. So one, I get a lot of these guys as patients. So I remember I had a guy who came in. He had somehow his hand got stuck in some kind of machine, and his very first question for me was not if you can save my hand, but when can I go back to work?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I've seen these guys like they have to do that work. They need it. It's you get paid by the week, and so for every day I don't show up, that's a day out of the check, regardless of the reason. It doesn't matter if my hand got stuck in the machine.
Hmm.
So it prepared me for that because I got to see, this is a lifestyle that I might not have been privy to had I had not done this job. And in addition, obviously, like my stamina, and I don't by no means do I have the most stamina by compared to any resident. I would say I have average stamina, but I always like to think that when the days get tough in residency, I think back to those days, and I'm like, yeah, I was able to make it through that. So these days, I could probably make it through this. And it's
Yeah.
just one day at a time too. I'm not thinking like, oh, I can breeze through residency. No, it's just you just make sure you just get up and show up each day. That's it. And you
Mm.
look up and then you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you gotta find a way to like, I'm sure you have to find a way to, uh, like manage the physical side of it and also the mental and like try to make the best of it. It sounds like you're doing that. Um, what do you, is there like one or two things that you find to be like the most challenging as you are training in emergency medicine?
The two hardest things to me, I would say, one, just the emergency medicine lifestyle, the rotating shift work. Uh, it's not as hard for me now, but when I first started residency, I can remember that being one of the more difficult things. Because you would switch from days and nights so frequently. I guess my circadian clock would get off,
Hmm.
and a lot of times I wouldn't even know what day it is. I wouldn't know what day it is. Like, and I would look up, and it's been a week since I, touched base on something, just because I'm so lost in what's happening. That was difficult. But I don't. The human body is amazing. You adjust. You adjust to all kinds of things, and so I don't know. I feel like I'm adjusted or seasoned now, where that doesn't bother me as much. Especially since it just doesn't bother me much, like it used to.
Hmm.
But probably the most difficult aspect of residency, irrespective of emergency medicine, is the working on holidays. That was probably a big thing, and it still is difficult for me now. And unfortunately, in emergency medicine, the holidays like the Super Bowl for us. So it's like
Yeah.
that's the time when you want to be at work so you can interact with things. So but I knew that going into emergency medicine. I would say in residency, I don't necessarily know. I expected that in residency as well.
Yeah.
So it's a certain degree. So it just it's you gotta take the bad with the good sometimes, and that's just the bad, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Like you feel like you're missing stuff, family, friends, that people that are not in your field. They're just kind of going along with their life, and you just have to, yeah, you miss out for a while. I can see that being hard. What do you love about it though? What do you love about what you're?
There's a lot of things I love, and I'll keep it short. So I have like a little spiel on this too. I call them the three P's. Specifically about emergency medicine. I like the people, I like the patients we get, and I like the people that go into emergency medicine. I find that specialties select for like certain individuals a lot of times. And I know you've seen Dr. Flecken and his in rendition of an emergency medicine doctor. It
Mhm.
selects for those type of people. I would say I'm that guy. I work out before every shift. just so I can get hyped up for the shift. So it's pretty on brand. So the people, uh, obviously like the pace. I'm one of these people. I like when my days are busy. When the
Mhm.
days are busy and fast, the days go fast for me. So I don't mind, coming into work and being on my feet. And sometimes I'll even see how many calories can I burn during this shift, or how many steps can I get in during a shift. I come to work like that's almost an extension of my workout, to be honest. But it's like I'm like excited for it. And then the pathology. This is just my own, me liking, at medicine. But I feel like in emergency medicine, I can still deal with the whole spectrum of medicine. I'm not specialized in one area. I can, deal with a guy who has a broken arm, next to a guy who's having a psychotic break, next to a guy who, just found out they had cancer, next to someone who's homeless. So and their only problem is they're homeless. So I deal with all these different things in any given day, any combination, at varying speeds and difficulties, and so I love that.
Mm.
Um, so you take all that together, and it makes me like emergency medicine. And then I'm in a training environment, residency, where I'm at a hospital where I can do all these different things. So it's even better for me. For me,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad that you enjoy it so much. It's good to it's good for each of us to be able to find that, if at all
yeah.
possible. Um, do you mind if I ask, because coming from a like a financial planning standpoint, as like that's how my brain tends to go. Did you have to take out loans for school? Is that something that you're having to manage kind of on the side while you are learning to do all this?
I did take out loans, and I can't say I took out the most, but I took out enough where I am worried about it. So I'm thankful for all these like the student loan repayments being frozen. I'm incredibly grateful for that, because I don't necessarily know. Like I feel like if I was making student loan payments now, it'd make things harder for me. However, I will say this though, since I did take those 5 years off in between, I have made student loan payments before. So I've had to do that in the past.
Mm.
So I am familiar with it. In terms of like planning, uh, I can't say I done anything particular to plan. It's like I know things you should do. I know the general strategies. But truth be told, like residency takes up so much of my time. I haven't really sat and thought, how I'm going to attack my loans, which I probably should, but it just me personally, I haven't really had the time to sit down and be like, okay, this is my plan. I have like an idea. They always say live like a resident once you're an attending. So hopefully I'll do that. But I'm a regular person. Who knows? I could become an attending and start trying to live like an attending. So I think when I get to that point, I'll get more into it. And I have some friends that are all recent grads, and they can give me advice as well. So I think that's my plan for now. But I can't honestly say I've thought about it in depth yet.
Yeah. There's not a lot to do. And the COVID relief pause has also made it such that like there's even an inability to take action. Like I've had many residents say like, I'm trying to pick my income driven repayment plan and it won't let me. And I'm like, well, like so much about the system is like it's just like it's all gunked up. Like it's just
Yeah.
all it's just stuck. And now we're delayed until probably August. They say June, but it's probably going to be August. With the delay of payments again. And so I I I mean, once it does actually end, which I have no idea when it's going to happen, but like the main things are just like you got to pick an income driven repayment plan so that you can just survive and pay a minimal amount while you're in training. And then once you get out and you start earning an attending paycheck, then you can look to refinance to a lower interest rate and then aggressively pay it off. That's essentially what it is, especially in emergency medicine. For many in emergency medicine, there are some PSLF or public service loan forgiveness options. But like with the way in which so many hospitals hire emergency medicine docs, the opportunity to work directly for a nonprofit is reduced. So it's not so common where you would go for public service loan forgiveness. So like the refinance and pay it off after training is much more likely. But um, I I appreciate what you mean when you say like residency takes so much of your brain space and time, like to plan on something that you can't do a whole lot about now anyway. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you'll be able to act like when you graduate summer of 2024.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like in that fall, it's like and like the payments, like I don't like whatever your debt amount is, but if you're in like if you're a two, three, $400,000 range somewhere in there, as an attending, your payments to aggressively pay off, they're going to be like $3,000-$4,000 a month, which sounds like that's like your entire paycheck right now.
It
uh,
is. It is. It is.
but your opportunity for earning is so high, as I'm sure like as you've heard,
Yeah.
that it'll be a chunk of your take home pay, but you will be able to have a nice life and still knock it out.
Yeah.
So it sucks. It's a lot. So I don't mean to diminish how it might feel and the stress of it. But I've seen so many success cases, so
Mhm.
many. It'll be all right for what it's worth.
That's what I'm holding on to because it'll figure itself out when I get to that point, and I know it can be done because other people have done it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Um, so question like that, I don't know if this is too broad of a question, but like if you could look back on like what you're going to be doing over the course of the next 30 years in medicine, is there something that you want to be known for?
uh I want to be good. I want to be good. I want to, every specialty and every residency program. I honestly believe this. There's always one old doctor still hanging around who, people tell stories like, oh, back in the day they used to do like legendary stories. I want to be one of those characters. I want to be able to be like, hey, I was a med student during the coronavirus, pandemic, and I was I was a resident during monkeypox. We had a lot of monkeypox down here. I personally saw that. And I want to have like good skills. I want to be a good doctor. I don't necessarily have to be the top research guy. I don't have to be giving symposiums every day. But I just want to be good at what I do. Actually, I would say I'll be honest. I want to be excellent. I don't even want to be good. I want to be excellent. I want to be the excellent at what I do. And that's my goal. Like
Yeah. Well, I that you and so many of your colleagues are taking that approach to because that's a real that's you become someone who improves the lives of so many other people when they need it most. Uh, that's a it's very much appreciated. I want you to know that from my perspective, it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Um, Now I can tell that obviously you love emergency medicine.
Yeah.
Um, if anyone is in medical school and they're trying to decide which type of medicine they want to practice, why should they go into emergency medicine? What would you say?
I mean, how much time do you got? Like I would argue that emergency medicine is a lifestyle specialty. The typical back in the day they had what was called the road specialties, which were the lifestyle ones, like radiology, opto, anesthesia, and derm. Those were like the for sure going to be like the lifestyle specialties. EM is too. There's a lot of myths, that you don't have that much control over your schedule. You got to work nights and days. I mean, this isn't all the way true. If you go through some of these companies, you could tell them, "Hey, I only want to work days," or "Hey, I don't want to work any weekends," and they'll find a place for you. Um, and that's out there if you want that. And this is irrespective of pay and all the other things. There's a lot of other factors that go into it, but that's just the baseline that's out there. But other than that, it's like the three P's. If you like those three things, if you want to come to work with a unique set of individuals, both patients and even the people, the staff, like ER nurses, like they're like a certain kind of if you're in the nurse circles, you'll know the ER nurses are like a special breed of nurse, versus you have our techs, our RT, like everyone in the ED, like we're like a certain kind of person, and I love it. So it's like I come to work and it's like, hey, I'm with my people. I'm doing, and then I'm getting to do cool stuff. Like I can do. There's just so many things you can do in EM that aren't. You know, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Like just look up. If you're a med student, look up like scope of practice for EM, and you'll see all the things that we can do. Anything from C sections, all like now you don't want to be doing one of these, but if you find yourself in a situation where you have to do like a perimortem C-section, it's like that's within our scope. The
What?
thoracotomy where you open the chest, that's within our scope. Uh, it's and then you have your regular, your belly pain, your chest pain. Like I love a good belly pain. I love a good chest pain. I like telling someone, or I don't like telling them, but when they have like, hey, I have chest pain, and I give them nitro, and they're like, hey, my chest pain's better. I like that. So you got the bread and butter stuff. Then you got the peds aspect of it, man. You have kids. Like, hey, this guy, I diagnosed appendicitis on a kid just on physical exam. Like you have those aspects. So there's just so many different things that you can do. So many niches. It's just if you're one of these people that's like, hey, I just like it all. Like this is the specialty for you. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Um, is there do you happen to have like an anecdote or something in your experience that you feel would be encouraging for people in medicine to hear?
I can just say my own personal life. So I know a lot of people like to hear cool EM stories, and every EM doc has like a plethora of these. But I'll say like I'll say a less cool story. So I'll say for me, I wasn't by no means was I the top of my class in med school or even in undergrad. Like I've always been like a middle of the pack kind of guy. I have my days where I'm like really good on the test, I have my days where I'm bad. But even despite all of that, I still managed to match somewhere where I still managed to match one, and then not only that, I still managed to match somewhere where I wanted to go. And I think that speaks, because there's a lot of med students out there who, and if they're like me, it's tough. You're surrounded by so many smart individuals. Like sometimes you might feel inadequate. Like hey, you get the imposter syndrome. And I had all that, and I somehow have made it here. So I was like, if anything, I try to make content for those kind of people so they can see like, hey, you can be a regular guy and still like regular guy or girl and still make it through. You don't have to be like some super genius, like top of the class all the time to make it into being a doctor. No, you can be a regular person and get into EM. I know tons of regular people who are neurosurgeons. Like it just, if that's what you want to do, you put the work in, you find out what needs to be done and you put the work in, and then you do it and you get there. So I guess, my whole life is the anecdote. I wish I could share more of it so people could see, and I try to on Twitter, without upsetting people, but it's that's it. Um, but in terms of cool EM stories, if someone wants to hear one of those, let's see. Everyone likes the traumas. Those are the ones that really get people going. The shooting, stabbings, and stuff. Um, but I like the medicine. I like the medicine. So you see a lot of stuff on TV. Someone like has a heart attack, and then they do something to him, and then they're like, oh, the guy wakes up and is like, hey, you saved my life. I'm like, that's not what happens, right? In real life, if you do save someone, they typically, they're will be in the ICU, and they'll be like, sedated for a period of time, and then they'll maybe wake up a few days later and
Hmm.
like, oh, what happened? And then you have to tell them, hey, this is what happened. So I remember I had this guy one time who had been literally stabbed in the heart. Literally, he had been stabbed. The knife went in him in such a way that it went in between his ribs and punctured his ventricle.
Oh,
And so this, I'm surprised he made it. He made it all the way to the hospital when he did, but he made it in the hospital and he was still, alive. They down in the ED, they did the thoracotomy. That's where they open him up. They go in, and this was amazing because this was at the time we had so much stuff coming in that this was a resident who was doing this. Not even the attending doctor was doing this. This was a resident who was doing this. He opened the guy up. He was like, "Hey, this guy has a hole in his heart. We can't fix this down here in the ED, so we have to go to the OR." And so by chance, I wasn't on my EM rotation. I was on the ICU rotation. I was on the surgical ICU rotation. So I knew this guy was coming up. And typically surgical ICU, we run the ICUs. But sometimes if you're on the rotation, you can go into the OR if you want. So I actually went into the OR and saw this. And literally, I watched this guy who's one of my friends in residency. He literally sewed this guy's ventricle up, and so it was a hole. I picture a heart that's actually beating, and while it's beating, he's holding it with some tongs and sewing it like while it's moving. And so this guy goes to the ICU. They close him up. He sits in there about 2 days, and like on the third day, he wakes up talking fine, like just fine. And like I see stuff like that all the time. His story is not unique, but it's just from coming in, stabbed in the heart. All these things happen to him, and they're up and talking, and this it's nothing short of I say it's a miracle, man. There's a lot of things I see in medicine I can't explain. It's like, hey, that guy, if you look up the stats, people who get thoracotomies, they usually don't make it. So this guy had all of that happen, and then he survived, and it's almost amazing, and like, yeah, the first part of that started in the ED, and the second part was in the OR, and then the third part was in the ICU, and all that working together is amazing. And I love medicine for that.
yeah,
I also like EM because I can rotate through all that stuff too, and I can see all of it. So it's just it was amazing to me. So
that is awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that you want to do this work. It makes a real difference for people. And this man, like, as obviously it made a life-changing difference for him. So well, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking some time to talk with me. It was nice to get to know you better, and to hear your perspective on your field. So keep up what you're doing. Appreciate you, man.
yeah, thanks for having me.